He has spoken on the topics faith, family, and freedom in Cuba, Belgium, Brazil, Congo, UK, and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. Please help me welcome J. Loren Norris.
As many sales training and business development meetings as I've been in throughout the course of my career, it seems odd to me that all of those meetings kind of end with one crescendo, and that is the new tactics, the new strategies, the new plans, the new goal setting, the new targets for accomplishment over the next year. All of them are designed to motivate and compel, to inspire the people on the team to rise to new heights, to do new things. And yet, every single one of those meetings also reminded us, get back to the basics. Focus on what makes the process work. Yes, you have to have the new goals and you have to have the new ideas and you have to have something to strive for. But more than that, you've got to do the basics. Do the basics. You've got to figure out what your priorities are and make your priorities a priority. That's what I want to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders.
Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.
I'm J. Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast, and I can tell you there's been a lot of frustration around the world, even with, silly little things like pandemics, oil availability, the supply chain being all broken down and things scattered, ships sitting in the harbors or even out to sea, and they realized, well, there's too many of them out there. Let's move them further away so that nobody can see them, and obviously that makes the problem go away. Literally, there was an agenda for a period of time to simply have the ships that were off the coast of California move beyond the horizon so that nobody could see them even with binoculars. They were past the curvature of the earth, so to speak. Problem didn't go away. It was still a problem. But there's a lot of problems like that we kind of have to mull over in our head. What are we going to do about them? And these problems are sometimes the problems of finance, relationship, employees, product sales. I mean, you can't sell anything if you can't get the product to your door, right? Supply chain becomes an issue. You can't get any product to your door if the trucks and the trains aren't running. Both of those have been issues this year. Truckers, convoys blocking the highways, trains potentially on strike. All of those things have affected just the American economy in the year of 2022. And those things are all a big deal. I don't care what your business is. Even if you're in real estate, as soon as people can't move from one part of the country to the other, it's hard to sell a house in a new space. Of course, those who are buying up properties to rent, well, they're doing that because they see the economy headed to another turn where it's going to be hard to own your own home. So those who are sitting on rental properties and renting them out, they're going to be in the catbird seat. The people who control your rent have a large control of your life. Well, add that to the sicknesses and the illnesses and the seasonal flus and the allergies, and the list goes on and on and on of the things that just slow you down in life, or in some cases bring you to an abrupt halt. And the reality is there are so many of those things that impact your life. They control the quality of your life. They control where you spend your money and how much of it you can even get your hands on, how much cash you have, are you liquid? All of those questions control your life. They make a big difference in your stress level, which then impacts your anxiety and your inflammation in your body and your heart rate and your blood pressure and your health. See, these little things that seem unimportant to some people in different categories, they all come back to the one spot, and that is you and your peace. And that brings me back to the idea that we are all living in a world where it's easy to get distracted from genuine priorities. And we look at this life and we think, well, I'm 10 years old. Why am I worried about retirement? I'm 20 years old. I'm 30 years old. I'm 40 years old and I'm not thinking about retirement yet. I'm 50 years old. I should be retiring in the next decade or so. And I haven't even thought about it. I'm 65 and I'm retiring and all I got to live on is SSI. See, that we forget that time passes much more quickly than we expect. We also think sometimes that I can do that next year. I can focus on that in the coming year. And let me remind you, this is the last Leading Leaders podcast of 2022, because I don't do them on Saturdays. And well, this is the last Friday of 2022. This is the last business weekday of 2022. We're about to be in 2023. When you go to work on Monday, it's a whole new year. We're starting all over, right? New goals, new plans, new visions. But what about your priorities? Have they changed? Has the economic situation in the world changed? Has government control in the world changed? Have the trains started running on time and the trucks delivering the products on time? Have we suddenly overcome our supply chain issues and you can buy milk, bread, and eggs anytime you go to the grocery store at a reasonable price? I think not. And I really don't think all of those things are going to change over the weekend. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be a pessimist, but I am trying to be an optimistic realist. The optimism in me says we have to realize that in the same way we look at our retirement from 10 years old to 60 years old and we go, holy cow, that moves so fast. I wasn't ready for it. We think of it as long-range planning when we buy a house with a 30-year mortgage, hoping that we'll flip it within the next 10 years and make a profit on it because, you know, the housing market always goes up, right? And interest rates always go down, right? No. But see, that long-range planning of 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the road, it gives us the illusion that we have all the time in the world to make the decisions that we need to make. Let me remind you, this year is over in less than 72 hours. The year is over. Moving on to the next one. Now what? What have you done to prepare? Let me ask you this question, though. And this is what I really mean by priorities. And I'm not trying to be offensive to any of you. I'm just being an optimistic realist. For anyone of any faith background, we realize that life is both fragile and temporary. It's fragile and it's temporary. And the life we live now could be over when you walk out the front door. I mean, we now have a new name and a new word in the lexicon, especially in the American language, the sudden adult death syndrome. SADS. It's pretty sad, too, because we're seeing top-level athletic performers, people in the peak condition and shape of their life. People are concerned about everything they put into their body, every morsel of food, every ounce of energy that they expend is gone to make their body better, and yet they're suddenly dropping dead. The end of their life has come. Like this weekend brings the end of this year. Suddenly they have the end of their life, and they've got no time left to make decisions. Well, we like to think that I'll make that decision after the first of the year. I'll stop eating that stuff. I'll fast more. I'll think more. I'll pray more. I'll read more. I'll write more. I'll be a better somebody next year. And we often forget that there's no promise of next year. There's no guarantee of next year. We have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but that only means that somebody else can't take your life without paying a price for it. It doesn't mean that anybody can guarantee your life will be any longer. It could be as simple as a 20-year-old dropping dead on the soccer field, or a 50-year-old being hit by a drunk driver, or grandma falling and hitting her head in the kitchen. It can be over that fast, and there's no time to rethink. There's no time to apologize for the mistakes that have been made. There's no time to get right what we've done wrong. No, we live in a life that is both temporary and fragile. Let me throw a little guarantee behind that a lot of people are unwilling to admit. It's a truth. There's plenty of evidence to the facts. I dare you to just go back and read the Gospel of John, the one who said that he was Jesus' beloved, and listen to what he has to say. And if that doesn't get your attention, then jump forward to his latest book called Revelation and read about the Revelation, and you'll get another picture of how temporary and fragile life is. And that brings me to the reality of priorities. See, it's easy to think that my priority is my 401k. My priority is getting that car payment made. My priority is not losing the house to a foreclosure. My priority is making that next big business deal, selling that next product or service, or closing that partnership. My priorities might include some of those things on a day-to-day basis, but ultimately my priority is singular, and that is that I would come to know Jesus Christ better and introduce as many people as I can to that relationship with him. That's my number one priority. Now, there are a lot of ways that I do that. There are a lot of ways. This podcast is one of the ways that I do that, because I'm here every time I'm here to tell you a truth that you may or may not know. Sometimes those truths are very subtle and they're hidden in everyday vernacular. They're hidden in a way that you would think, well, it doesn't sound like he's preaching to me. Well, today I'm operating on priorities that are higher than my Leading Leaders podcast priorities. I'm operating on priorities that are higher than how much money is in the bank at the end of the year or how much money will be in the bank at the first of the year. Frankly, I don't care. That falls in a whole different set of things that I'm concerned about. But the things that I'm most concerned about are that when I get to heaven, and perhaps it's St. Peter who meets me at the gate and he says, "Why should I let you in? What have you done with the knowledge that I gave you?" My answer will be, I believed on the name of the Son of God, Jesus Christ, as my Savior. And I spent my time on earth just making a few friends so that I can look to the left and right as far as the eye can see and find all the people who knew about Jesus as Lord and Savior because of my time on earth. Anything less than that is a failure to recognize my genuine priorities in life. Anything less than that is a failure abdicated of my responsibility while I'm on this earth. Anything less than that will not be deserving of, "I'm proud of you, my good and faithful servant. This is my son whom I love." That's what I want. That's what I live for. That's what I am here for. And I know that that's going to bring some pain in life. And in fact, there's a promise that there will be a day that your life may be required of you if you refuse to deny that Jesus Christ is Lord and Savior. In other words, he is Yahweh. There are some religions who cannot sit well with that. There are some belief systems that simply cannot acknowledge that Jesus of Nazareth was also the maker of the universe. But if that is understood by you, then you have a priority. Not just to say that God does wonderful things. Those are true. God also strikes people dead. You don't believe me? Go back and read about Elijah and the bear that ate the 3 teenagers who were disrespectful to Elijah. You don't think God had a hand in that? You need to read it again. How about the earth opening up to swallow the people who were rebellious against Moses? You don't think God had a hand in that? Moses didn't open the earth up. Nope. How about the Red Sea swallowing the Egyptians that were pursuing the Israelites as they ran away? Moses didn't do that either. God did that. There is a price to pay for defying God. There's a price to pay for thumbing your nose in his face. There's a price to pay for disobeying him. There's a price to pay for laughing at his face and mocking him. In fact, he says, "Don't be fooled. I won't be mocked." I say all that to say it's easy to forget in business that there are the basics, the blocking and tackling of sales, the getting the paperwork done on time, the turning in the right sales paper to process the project or the product that's been sold. If you don't fill out the paperwork right and hand it off, then nothing happens. Or if you hand it off to the wrong person, I mean, you can have the best sales package in the world, but if you give it to the janitor, nothing happens. The janitor may put it in the shredder for you. They don't have any idea how to process that sale. It's not their job. And in the same way, the priorities of your life should be that you realize that you were made by someone, and that someone has a very particular interest in your life and a very particular mission and assignment for your life, and also requires that you hand in the right paperwork, that you have the right kind of relationship, that you don't take advantage of the processes in the system by cheating, but you follow the instructions that you're given. And filling out all the right paperwork and turning it into the wrong person is no more effective than filling out all the wrong paperwork and turning it into the right person. At the end of the day, we will all be judged. I won't be your judge and you won't be my judge. But at the end of the day, we'll all be judged. And the standard by which he judges any of us is the standard by which he judges all of us. And the powerful contrast there is that there is no one whose mistakes whose bad behavior, whose horrible relationships, whose damage and destruction that they've caused in the lives of other people, 2 people, 10 people, 10 million people, 100 million people. There is no magnitude of corruption, deception, and death which the Almighty cannot and will not forgive. That's a hard one to let settle in. Because at one point we like to think, well, my life hasn't been so bad. At least I wasn't like that other person. But the challenge is righteousness is an exact plumb line. You either are or you're not. So far, there's only been one human who could say, I are. In fact, the way he said it is, I am. I am that I am. He was the only perfect one, the only righteous one, the only one who never made a mistake or sinned. The rest of us, we got stuff to atone for. We got stuff to account for. Maybe we lied on a test, lied on an application, lied on a resume. Politicians do it, apparently. Just in this most recent election, they do. Maybe it was a small thing, just a little white lie. Maybe it was just, what time you came home and you were talking to your spouse or your parents. Or maybe you caused the death of 100 million people, like Mao. For either one of those two, there's one solution, one answer. It's the blood of Christ. He died, so you didn't have to. And when we're all standing there before the judgment seat, and we're all asked the question, what have you done? Those who can acknowledge that he is Lord, and he acknowledges them, because there are those who will say, I've done all these things in your name, and he'll say, I didn't know you. We never had a thing. We never had a relationship, you and me. I know you called yourself religious. I get that. I know you did good deeds. I get that. Thank you. But you and I, we were never simpatico. We were never close and intimate. You never listened to my whispers in the dark of night. You never surrendered to me. And that's the one bridge. Just one bridge. And if you're not willing to cross that one bridge, all of the other fancy stuff, it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. I know that's harsh, but it's truth. And that's what I'm here for. So I want you to know as we close out 2022, if you've been watching Leading Leaders Podcast for any period of time, you know that I don't go down this path very often because I know that there are a lot of people who watch, listen, and share this podcast who they don't share the same religious faith that I do. I get that. I'm not trying to be unfair to you, and I'm not trying to judge you, and I'm not trying to be unjust to you. But I would be unjust and unfair and uncivilized if I knew your house was on fire and I didn't bother to tell you about it. So I'm taking that time today to let you know life is short. Very, 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 very short. I don't care if you live to be 100 years old. Eternity is exponentially longer. But the decisions that you make in this life will determine how you live eternity. There is no question whether or not you will live forever. That is an absolute. You will live forever. You're an eternal being. The question is not will you live forever, it's where. And the difference made there is with whom are you aligned? With whom are you aligned? I'm aligned with Jesus Christ. I'm firmly convinced that he is the Lord and Savior of all mankind, and that anybody who calls on his name can be saved. If you're curious about that for yourself, you'd like to have a deeper conversation, feel free to send me a private message. I'll be delighted to engage in that conversation with you. I want you to know as we end 2022 and we move into 2023, there's a whole lot of uncertainty in the world of politics and the world of economies. I'm not even sure that this thing we call the US dollar will last the next decade, or this political structure that we've called a representative republic and some have mistakenly called a democracy, that it will last the next decade. I don't know. I just don't know. Is World War III pending? Is Skynet being built? Will AI take over the universe? Nobody knows the answers to those questions, but I do know this one thing. It is appointed for every man once to die and once to face judgment. And the decisions you make in this life will determine what happens on that day. It's not if, it's when. Maybe it doesn't happen for you in the next decade. Maybe not for the next 50 years or 75 years. Maybe it's tomorrow. And maybe it happens so suddenly you don't have a chance to make a different choice. So choose now. Get your priorities right. Leaders know when it's time to get your priorities right. If you look at everything that's going on in our world right now, from Balenciaga to BP Oil, our world is in a hard shot. It's going to be a really hard shot when we come to recognize that we can't undo the mess that's been done. Make the choices you got to make now. Prioritize eternity over everything else. Once you've got that piece, you can get back to the business of what you're here for. If that's making money, saving lives, saving children from sex trafficking, get busy doing it, and do it until he comes. I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast, or Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.